Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my podcast on sacred relationships. Today, we're going to look at how to create a sacred relationship. It starts with self-love. You can't really engage in a loving, flowing relationship with another human being if you don't love yourself. And I'm not saying that you have to arrive at a state of complete self-love before you're ready for that kind of relationship. But you want to be at a point where there's enough self-love that if somebody comes along ready to offer you love, that you don't just go, nope, not for me, can't have that, bye-bye. And often that is disguised as independence. I loved Robert Holden's term functional. He calls it dysfunctional independence. And I remember when I first heard that term in a workshop many years ago, I went, oh my God, that's me. I was this fiercely independent person. I can manage on my own. Thank you very much. I'm here to help you, but no, I'm good. I'm good. And I remember at one point, a male friend of mine actually said to me, Benita, you intimidate men. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. You don't seem to need anybody. And I contemplated that comment for years. I really had to shift on that to be in the relationship I'm in today, because it's very reciprocal. We help each other out all the time. And that's in every day. Something needs to be done around the house, whoever's handy does it. There's no, you should do this, you should do that. It's just, oh, that needs doing, I'll do it. We both anticipate each other's needs or desires, and we look for ways to please each other. We pay attention to when our partner says something, oh, it sounds like they're suggesting they want this. We listen closely and we look for the signals that our partner might have a particular desire or need. When we go through illness, we take care of each other, and it's very balanced. It's very reciprocal that way. Well, that just doesn't work if we're blocked. It just doesn't. So we first want to at least get a really good start on the work of self-love. And in my approach as a psychic coach, it's quite different, because a lot of times I'll work with people who say, oh yeah, I love myself, I'm good. But during their life, at times of trauma, and it might not have been a major trauma, but something that felt traumatic to a younger part of themselves, that part gets frozen in time at the age that pattern began, and it stops developing. So I do deep shadow work with my clients, where I actually have developed techniques for guiding them back to those parts of themselves, so they can help those parts to feel loved, supported, and they can find out what those aspects actually need for them to wake up, become conscious, and realize that they're in a different time now. They're in an adult body. They have agency. They have choices they didn't have back then. And it's okay for them to choose to be happy, to feel loved, to reach for love to the right people. So that's a whole other ballgame there, doing that work. But however you choose to do it, whether it's with me or whether it's with somebody else that you trust, it's really important to do that inner child work, because it's usually the inner children that are still unconscious, that are still unhealed, that still feel undeserving of love, that will block a sacred relationship. They will run, or they will find a reason to push that person away. The next thing we want to look at is whether or not we really allow ourselves to receive from others. So many of us, as soon as somebody gives us anything, we try to give that energy right back. And my partner has called me on that one. Again, like I said, once you get into a sacred relationship, it's not that you've arrived. The work continues, but now it gets to continue as somebody who can hold up a mirror to the stuff you still need to work on. And he's had times he's had to say that, you don't have to do something right back. So part of learning to receive love is allow the other person the gift of giving to you. and just receive it. Just thank you. That's wonderful. I so appreciate that. Because if you give the energy right back, you've actually denied them the joy of giving to you. So working on letting yourself receive. And if you're not in a partnership right now, notice when a friend offers a compliment. Do you graciously accept it or do you put yourself down? If somebody invites you to something, do you feel like you have to give energy right back, or can you just receive the experience? It's interesting that amongst the Buddhist monks, they have a vow that they're not allowed to refuse a gift. And that's because while they're in the temples earning good karma for a fortunate rebirth, the lay people are having to go about the everyday work. And the way they earn good karma for a fortunate rebirth is they will give alms to the monks. They will put something in their begging bowl as they go by. They will make donations to the monasteries. So by refusing those gifts, they deny them that fortunate rebirth. It's an interesting concept that we can carry over into our way of living. Do we allow somebody the joy of giving to us? Do we allow them that good feeling of having made a difference? Or do we immediately deny them that by trying to give that energy back in some way? Trust that that person will receive that energy in some way, at some point, whether it's through you or somebody else. Don't give back until you sense the timing is right. And it might be when that person really has a need for your support. Giving love is another thing we can be really blocked on. This is one of the reasons I started this series. We've become so transactional in our relationships. Well, I'm not going to give if that person doesn't give. Let's see what they do. We've really developed a culture of, I'll give this much and let's see how they react. And if they react well, I might give a little bit more. What was a real shocker for me when I went to Nepal and Tibet was how openly giving and loving were the people that I met everywhere. That they would instantly just develop a deep connection. And I noticed nobody was holding anything back. I remember standing on the street talking to a gentleman, and within minutes I'd met his wife, his kid, and was being invited next time I was in Pokhara to stay in their home. I encountered that generosity everywhere. People inviting me to sit down and have a picnic with them. People who just saw me get off a tourist bus, come, they don't speak in English, but they gestured to sit with them and enjoy some time with them. Everywhere I went, people just enveloped me in love. And I remember thinking, wow, what if we all did that? What if we were just so loving to the people that we meet, that became our culture, that we weren't so cautious, so hesitant? Because when you think about it, it's really not about trusting the other person. It's about trusting ourselves, our own discernment. So if we offer love to somebody in whatever way that means, and they rebuff it or they have a negative reaction to it in some way, now we can make a different choice. We can either hold space for that if we think, well, there's somebody who's upset and they need some support, or whether we sense we need to step away and give that person space. We can make a different choice. But the fact that so often our first choice is to hold back, it's an unfortunate way to live, because if we want to meet somebody who's going to flow with us, who's going to enter into that sacred relationship, we have to be in a state of flow. If we're not, how could we possibly meet somebody who is? We're not going to be on the same plane as them. You have to come up to the level of love you want to receive by being able and willing to give that amount of love. And I think we have to get over the idea that if you give it, that you're somehow bereft, you're somehow left without if it doesn't come back to you. If you are practicing self-love, you're not dependent on other people to love you anyway. If it comes to you, wonderful. You can let yourself receive it if you're in a state of flow. If it doesn't, that's okay too, because you already have your own store of love. And again, I'm not talking about those relationships where it just falls down into an abyss and somebody takes and takes and never gives love back. I'm not saying to invest in any kind of situation like that. I'm simply saying that when you freely offer and you trust your discernment, that at some point, it will come back to you. And when you connect with somebody who's offering love back, that's where I want to invest more deeply. You do so. But we don't start off by just hanging on to our little store of love and, well, let's see what they do. Are they going to offer anything? Because if they're not offering anything, I'm not. We may be missing out on a lot of opportunities, not just to perhaps receive love from somebody, but to engage in the act of building our compassionate heart, of simply being a more loving individual. Because if you're out in the dating world, it's a lot more likely that people are going to send people your way if they think of you as somebody who's a compassionate, caring person. Remember, it's not just the persons that you meet that you think you might want to date. It's everybody in their circle that might recommend you as a partner. That's how I ended up with my partner. Dear friends of ours felt we would be a perfect match, and they were right. But they waited. They took their time until they felt we were both ready to meet each other. So had I not chosen to do the work that I'm recommending to you, had my partner not chosen, our friends would never put us together. So it really is making sure you're doing the work. And that's not just about who can I go out there and meet. It's, am I the kind of person my friends would recommend to somebody they cared about? Am I somebody they have such faith in would be a loving partner for their friend that they're not shy about saying, I think you should meet this person? That's a pretty interesting way of looking at preparing yourself for a relationship. Are you the kind of person your friends would have no discomfort recommending as a partner to somebody else they cared about? So I think it's kind of a neat thing to think about. So as you're doing that work, the next thing is surrendering to the path of love, which means not going into the act of allowing for love to come into your life with a whole lot of expectations of the person has to look a certain way, be a certain way, have a certain lifestyle, have a certain way of being. I think when you meet that person that you really feel that deep connection with, wherever you're at in life, you're going to lift each other up. You're going to support each other to attain a level of awareness, even perhaps a lifestyle, a career that might not have been possible had you been trying to do it all on your own. When you're together, the way you inspire and support each other lifts you up to a place you might never have gotten to. So put all that aside. Surrender to the idea that you are open to love in whatever form the universe wants to bring it to you. And that when you meet that connection and you feel that, you don't put up barriers of, oh, well, that's not what I was expecting. Be open to whoever comes your way in whatever form the universe puts them together. I believe that if you do find yourself in a sacred relationship, the pieces are going to fall into place. You're going to be drawn to that person. There's somebody you're going to want to be with. So just suspend judgment, because if you decide too specifically that you want somebody who is a certain way, then you don't even allow for the possibility of the right person to come along. Which is why I say, the qualities are so much more important than all the extraneous elements. Because it doesn't matter if somebody is gorgeous handsome, fit, unfit, wealthy, struggling, whatever. If that person has the qualities that are meaningful to you, they've got a good heart, whatever qualities are meaningful to you. For me, it's a great mind, a great heart, a sense of humor, care and compassion, not just for me, but for their community. And somebody who's on a spiritual path, whatever spiritual path means to them. I was never looking for perfection, just somebody who's working on themselves. And I ended up with somebody that was right for me, but I had let go of thinking about the qualities. I had placed intent to be with somebody that emanated certain qualities. But when I surrendered to the idea of having a loving partner in my life, I'd let go of all of that. So when it all showed up, it was wonderful, but I wasn't meeting people and analyzing, do they have these qualities? I would notice if somebody didn't seem to be very heart open, but I wasn't going around with a checklist. Just let's meet this person and let's see how I respond to them and what I'm learning about myself in the process. That was actually the most important thing to me when I went back out into dating, was to learn about myself and my patterns. Could I be somebody that could be a loving partner to somebody? I was looking much more at myself than I was looking at the people I was meeting. I was aware of them. I was looking at their qualities, but I was looking at how am I with them? Can I be open with this person? Can I be loving toward this person? So by the time I was introduced to my partner, it was just like, oh, with this person, I can just be open, be loving, be myself. This is relaxing. This feels right. This feels good. Here you are and here I am. But it does require surrender. If you go into an exchange already deciding, if I don't see this, we're not happening, you might miss so much more that person has going on for them. Now, if, I do say be aware of your deal breakers. If they're doing something that is not something you could ever live with, maybe they're into drugs and, any kind of recreational thing that is not for you. You might go, yeah, not my lifestyle, not my partner. That's fair. Because again, I've said before, when it's the right partner, you're not looking at them and thinking, well, I could live with that. You're like, yeah, I can totally live with this person. This is totally right for me. But just don't go in with a rigid checklist. Be open to what the universe wants to show you. Because as soon as we say, this is what I'm looking for, and I'm going to be super, super specific, you might meet that person. That might not be the person that the universe, that your path intended for you. The right person might be more. So just try and stay open and relaxed and observant about who shows up in your reality as you're starting to meet people, without being too in a box about what you're looking for. And then I would say the other thing to do is to move with the moment. Once you're with that person, just be aware of responding to the moment. Can you be spontaneous? Are there ways that old rigid patterns want to kick in? Because a lot of times what happens to people is once they do engage in the relationship, whatever they learned from watching their parents interact, it's part of your subconscious core material. It can show up in this relationship, or whatever you learned from previous relationships you've been in. It can show up if you're not consciously looking for it and becoming aware of it. So it's really useful to notice as you're moving into the relationship, are there any old fears, limiting beliefs that are getting in the way of being present? Are there any old habits of being in a relationship that don't serve this one? Be fluid. Move with what is happening. Because if your partner is, say, spontaneously wanting to surprise you with something, and you've got an old pattern of, oh, I hate surprises, You might be limiting the kind of love you could be receiving from them. That's just one example. If there's certain ways you were taught to see males, females, and you project that on your partner, you might miss some aspect of them that they can only show you if it's safe for them to do so, because you're open to seeing it. And be willing to love your partner's shadow. Be willing to be completely present and loving with the parts of them that they may not love themselves. Because in a sacred relationship, you love all of the person. You love the light and the dark of them. You don't want to miss any of it. This is what allows us to expand and grow in love and understanding, to be able to accept the person completely, to be able to support them on their growth. And that includes having those difficult conversations sometimes to work through some of the challenges, but you're doing it without judgment. You're not asking them to be a different person. You're inviting them to work with you to deepen your bond, your connection, and your understanding of each other. So those are my suggestions in terms of the steps to building a sacred relationship, to creating one in the first place. Thank you very much for joining me. I invite you to ponder these steps and ask yourself, where are you in those series of steps at this point? And what areas can you work on so you can expand in being able to offer love, receive it, and build a deep bond with your partner? I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.